my perspective is this: the customer's perception is all that matters. That's what they're living. That's what they're feeling. That's what we need to focus on.
Welcome, my lovely people, to another fabulous episode of the B2B Sales Trends podcast. Today, we're going to have a really cool episode, and it evolves around the fact that in sales, we love clean stories, right? Predictable funnels, clear dashboards, smooth running ops, and so forth. But the reality rarely is that easy, that tidy. Buyers behave differently than they say they do. Data tells half-truths, sort of, depending on how you use it. And even the best performing organizations can find themselves on the back foot when customer perception doesn't match the actual picture. Now, that tension between what's real and what's felt is where today's conversation lives. I'm joined by Robert Brandt. Rob is the Vice President of Sales Operations at Medline, one of the largest healthcare suppliers in the United States. And his world sits right at that crossroad of data, operation, and human behavior. And the decisions he and his teams make directly shape how thousands of sellers show up in front of customers every day. Now, today we explore shifting buying behavior, the rise of data intelligence, and what it truly takes to keep the road clear so sellers can focus on what they need to focus on: value, not just fire drills. Rob, welcome to the B2B Sales Trends podcast.
Well, good morning and glad to be here.
Fabulous. Before we go anywhere near data, dashboards, and all these wonderful things, let's start with you. You spent years selling before taking one of the largest sales support teams in healthcare. What pulled you into this world, and what moment made you realize this work mattered just as much as selling itself?
Good question. And being in this seat today is the biggest surprise to me, as I think it is to anybody, because lifelong salesperson, and was literally about 3 months away from moving into my next sales leadership role, which I had planned on retiring in. It was going to be, that's it, this is the one, and we're going to retire there. And I was approached by one of the senior leaders in the organization about pivoting and taking on a role in sales ops, which, for me was going to be a no. But I started to look at the opportunity, and it really intrigued me to do something different. And I took a very short-term approach. I can do this for a couple of years and get this ship turned to where you want it turned, and then move back into a sales role. But it didn't take long into my first year with the team to realize what potential and opportunity existed in a sales operations, a sales enablement role. We had a really unique opportunity to do three things if we did it well. Number one was to help support revenue growth. And whether that was clearing the pathway for the sales team to be able to continue to sell, or making it easier for our customers, that was one piece that would help. Number two, we had a direct impact on our customer retention rate. By the way we assisted and supported our customers. And we drive a 96% customer retention rate. It's a big part of our lifeblood, and the team that I lead is an important contributor to that. And the third one is that was very interesting, is that as we got better as a team, we became our sales team's kind of jackknife, do everything. So it didn't matter if it lived in our world or if it was outside of our world. Our customers and our sales team would come to us with the problem or with the question. And we had a unique opportunity to really strengthen our relationships, strengthen our customer positions by directing traffic and making sure things got done. So once I really looked at what the opportunity was and the impact we could have here, it really just became about, all right, how do we become the best? And that's what it's been from day one, is how do we become the best in the industry? And for me personally, it's been great because I still get to be involved in sales. I'm still involved in sales strategy, still involved in a lot of sales presentations, But more importantly for me, I was able to evolve into organizational strategy and really building a team that's the size of some small companies in healthcare. Um, really able to focus on one of my passions, which is leadership and people development. And now as it sits, my short-term view has changed as I'm 6 years in with this team, and you know, no end in sight.
Love it. Love it. We talked a little bit pre to this recording that about the fact that buying behavior has changed recently and is changing still continuously very fast. Healthcare buyers aren't who they were 5 years ago. The expectations are different, the sophistication is different, the pressures are different. What's the shift that you're seeing most clearly right now? And how is that shift changing the way these sales conversations play out?
Yeah, I think you use the right word, which is sophistication. We're seeing more sophistication in the supply chain process. The department has gone from the purchasing department to the supply chain department. And I think if you look at it, I think M&A has contributed a lot to this. Larger customers, there's outside influences. So we're starting to see more people come in from other industries. They have different experiences and different exposures. So we're really seeing a higher level of sophistication in terms of just the process of buying within the healthcare industry. Add into that, and really the last couple of years is the rapid acceleration of data and information. We're seeing more sophisticated dashboards and using different tools at the customer level than they've ever used before, which is really giving them a different level of knowledge for which they're able to make their decisions from. And it changes the dynamics of the questions that they ask. So when we think about the sales conversation itself, they've become more strategic. There was a lot of, in a pre-COVID environment, there was still a lot of the traditional questions. In a post-COVID environment, it's become more strategic and more focused on supply chain resiliency as opposed to different, just traditional distribution. So where in the past we would see questions in RFPs like, are you able to handle these EDI transactions? And they're basic EDI transactions, but those were the questions that were being asked. Now the questions revolve around your resiliency strategy and your inbound freight strategy for imports and exports, and your onshore manufacturing capabilities. So a lot deeper strategy around how do our healthcare partners drive continuity of products into the clinicians that are taking care of patients. So I think that's one. Number two is the data orientation. So you're hearing things that we never, before it was EDI. Can we order EDI? Can we pay our bill EDI? Now we're talking about, bi-directional interfaces. And are we able to give them information to populate their dashboard? Are they able to share information for us to help us more effectively demand, plan, and forecast for their utilization? So I think those have been the biggest changes in reporting and data integration have become much more popular. And then certainly the biggest buzzword in the industry in the last year and a half has been AI. And what are you doing with AI, and how do we see that changing the functionality of the company and the business relationship?
So, sometimes there is an issue when sort of perception collides with reality. I've seen sellers walk into meetings where the customer has a story that feels absolutely true, even when the data tells a different one. So how do you help teams navigate that moment without getting defensive or derailed in that moment?
It's common. It's a common challenge for us, and it's a great question. In my perspective is this: the customer's perception is all that matters. That's what they're living. That's what they're feeling. That's what we need to focus on. And the challenge that we have, especially, from a sales operations standpoint, really being analytically driven, is you run the risk of using information and having that play as an excuse or a justification of, well, here's what's happening. This is what the data says. It's not our fault because here's what's happening. The information proves it. And the last thing that our customers want is not to have their perspective validated, not to feel like we haven't heard what they're saying. So at times it's a fine line to walk because we know what the information says, we know what's going on, but we've got to balance how we engage and interact with the customer, so that we don't cross that line. So it's not complicated, and it goes back to just the old school principles. You start by listening, right? Really make sure that we're hearing what the customer is saying. What is at the root? What is at the core of their frustration? Make sure we have a good grasp on that and understand it. Sometimes it's got to be a fearless conversation. Sometimes we do have to push back, or sometimes we have to engage in a conversation that calls out some gaps on their side. But I think it's one of the hallmarks of our company is that we've never been afraid to have honest, fearless conversations with our customers and really
Nice.
do it in a spirit and intent of how do we get to a better place together. Um, so that's, I think, kind of core is to work through that. And once you get to that place, we share the same goal. We all want to be at the same place. We all want a procure to pay process that flows smooth. We all want product flow that's uninterrupted and helps, is accretive to patient care. So we share the same goal. So once we get to that place where everybody's aired everything out, we identify the common ground. It's about building the plan, right? And sometimes that plan is we just have to block and tackle better, right? Sometimes
Right.
we're just not as good as we should have been as a team, and we've got to own that. So we've got to tighten some processes up, maybe redefine a few things. Other times, it actually opens the door to innovation. We had a few years back a very, very, very large new customer that was coming on board, and they looked at some of the reporting applications that we did and some of our standard processes. And as we worked through them, they didn't like them. They were not happy about them. They wanted more of a centralized data repository, which again, you go back to when they were coming on board. Cloud-based wasn't as common and prominent. And that
Right.
was a big point of contention, for them. And hey, we made this decision because we thought y'all were this, that, and the other. And we look at this and it's not. So that opened the door for us to come back, convene as a team internally, and we actually innovated a new application, a new process for them that we've used in a number of other places. So you build a plan, you see where it takes you, you have to execute. We don't execute, it doesn't matter. Scoreboard it to make sure we're executing, touch back with the customer and make sure that they feel things are getting better. And then you move forward. And I think what's really interesting is we don't always break the perception. There are things in our industry that common sense would say, yeah, this is the way it should function. And unfortunately, in healthcare, it doesn't function like that. So our customers continue to have the perception. But I think the value for us is even if we're not able to break the perception and we have the same conversation 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 times, it's our willingness to listen, our willingness to engage in the conversation, our willingness to roll up the sleeves and work hard and get to a result with our customer that really helped set us apart as an organization.
Of it. Of it. You talked a little bit about the keep the road clear sort of philosophy in the past. And what this is about is really how your team's job is it to really have sellers focus on value rather than putting out fires everywhere, fire drills and so forth. Can you take us a little bit behind the scenes on what that actually looks like and what most people misunderstand about that?
If there are problems that exist, then our sales, and for us, our salespeople are out in front. They're responsible for satisfaction, if you will. And so if problems exist, so for example, if the procure to pay process is broken, and if there's invoice exceptions, they're stacking up in accounts payable, that creates work. That's disruption to our customers' flow. It's time, it's effort, it's money, it's real. or if there's a disruption in supply and now we've got a gap in terms of getting supplies to clinicians that are trying to take care of patients, and that frustration flows backwards from the clinician to the supply chain team, right? So they're taking that downhill brunt. When that exists, you are not going to have growth conversations. You're not going to have conversations about, growing the branded product line or expanding the services and the supports that drive the company. You go from selling to problem solving. And our
Right.
salespeople, they live to sell. That's their lifeblood. It's what they do. So from a sales support standpoint, a sales operations standpoint, our job is to make sure that those applications run smooth. When those problems come up, we've got to handle those. So we clear the rubble out of the road. We allow the operation to run smoothly. And when that happens, then our salespeople are able to be building relationships with the clinical team, having conversations about new products, new services, whether it be clinical or
Right.
logistical, because the customer now has the ability to focus on value growth as
Right.
opposed to, hey, the foundation of the house is crumbling and you want to talk about adding another floor to the house. Not going to happen here.
Yeah.
And so it's a very core application to revenue growth and retention. And our sales team relies on us very heavily to make sure that happens.
Right. And in one of the previous episodes, somebody has pointed out a similar issue, and then they illustrated it through a story to say, hey, if I have a toothache and go to the dentist, I don't want them to do their hygiene of my teeth. I want them to sort out my painful tooth, right? And then afterwards talk about the hygienist again. I thought that was a quite nice
Well,
little
the
connection.
other thing they don't want is you don't want to go to the dentist and have them looking and go, yeah, you got a cavity or you got a bad tooth. Yeah, I know, I feel it, right? They want to know what you're going to do to fix it.
Solve my problem.
Yeah, and so that's really the key thing is ultimately,
Mm,
what are we going to do to fix it? How
yeah.
quick can we get it fixed?
Right. Right. Let's talk about data a little bit, and we touched on that earlier. There's more data than ever. Um, Not all of it is useful. Um, some of it creates even confusion. How do you coach your team and the sellers within the team, obviously, to separate that signal from the noise out there?
Uh, it's a good question, and I think it starts with just being aware of exactly that. Just because
Mm,
you have information, what does
right.
it mean? And I remember it- sitting down and looking and not to call out our competition, but looking at some competitive reports because we
Hmm.
always want to make sure that we know what's going on across the board and what our customers are being presented with. And some of them were very good, and some of them were very pretty. But as I dove through the pretty, it really the question is, okay, great, but what is this telling us? What are we going to do with it? And I firmly believe that data is only valuable if it either validates previous action, right? It serves as our scorecard. How are we doing? Or it drives meaningful action.
Mm.
If it's not going to do one of those two things, then what are we doing? What are we doing with it? And is it relevant? So, for example, we had one of our folks who's learning captured a data set, and they were all excited about the data set. And technically speaking, it could be an important data point, but it was so
Mhm.
minuscule, it just wasn't meaningful, right? And so we really worked to train our team to understand, what is the data telling you? What's the story here? What is the action, if any, that needs to be taken with it? How relevant is it? How meaningful is it to the customer? Does it connect? There's some really meaningful data points out there that we get all
Um,
excited about.
yeah.
Our customers, it's not important to them. So we've got to understand that, and we've got to put that. So there's a lot of training and retraining and reinforcement that goes in, and especially with our managers who are out working with the team every day in the field when there's a report and just asking, okay, great. What is this telling us? What are we doing? What is this metric telling us? What are we doing? So we measure, one of our core measures is our fill rate, our ability to deliver product to our customer. And that metric tells us we're either doing really good or maybe there's an opportunity for improvement. Well, number one, that's our perspective based on the numbers. We've got to understand, how does our customer feel? But then within that, whatever that gap tells us, number one, why? Why does it exist? Number two, what are we doing about it? Number three, how fast can we move? So we've got to continue to teach and train and do that. The other piece of it is our customers ask for reports all the time. Or our sales team will be, hey, we got to have a report on this. And we've really had to work hard with our team to validate, to put the brakes on. We used to just run and jump and, spend hours creating some Excel macro and Excel magic and, some really complex report that never got used. And so our team does a much better job right now of putting the brakes on. And whether it's our sales team or the customer, asking the question of, help me understand how you want to use this, what you want to get out of this actual information piece. And so many times we find out what they're asking for isn't what they're trying to get to. So by putting the brakes on, we're able to say, oh, okay, so this is what we really want to do. Or, hey, fully understand. And you know what? We already have this tool, this report that's in play that we can take advantage of. So just a lot of that traditional training, but that reinforcement in the field. And then again, just being able to sit there and say, what are we really trying to accomplish? Now, I think really important in this space is this is an area where I think AI is going to be very, very valuable to us, because it's going to allow us to take those larger data sets and really get to the points of focus. So like our risk report is a big, big, big report. It's not that we have a lot of things at risk. There's just a lot of stuff on the report. But by being able to manage larger data sets and applying AI to it, we're able to focus in on maybe the 10 or 15 or 20 things that truly need to be focused this week, and that we can execute those and make a difference.
Love it. Let's help our listeners apply a couple of these insights that you've shared. And let's stick with the sales leaders, as you've just referred to them a little earlier here. Now, if sales leaders are right now listening, and he or she wants to sort of tighten the relationship between sales and sales support in a week, this week, let's say, what's the first practical step that they should take, and what's the biggest, pitfall to avoid?
So it's pretty simple. It's in my mind, it's communication. Sales and sales support need to talk on a regular basis, but the communications sometimes need to be guided. I think the biggest pitfall is really is assuming that everybody knows what they should be talking about. So when I got into this role, that was one of the things we felt like was best practice, was going to make a big difference. We got to have our sales team support, the sales folks talking to our people. So we like, hey, everybody's got to get out and talk. You got to talk to your salesperson every week. Are you having a conversation yet? Well, what we found out was the conversation was, hey, how was your weekend? Good. Hey, what kind of coffee do you like? And it wasn't, everything good? Yep, everything's good. Okay, great. See you later. The conversation, the communication wasn't hitting what it needed to hit. So we developed a tool. We actually call it a tick sheet, so we could tick off some key boxes. And it provides a framework for that conversation on a weekly basis. So the core business elements that are kind of universal are being talked about, but then it also has an application for the customer specific business elements. Is one thing that drives me crazy is when projects fall through the gaps because nobody truly took ownership. So we now are able to, in those weekly conversations, say, here's what's going on in the core customer metrics. Here's what's happening. And hey, Mr. Salesperson, this is where I need your help. Where do you need my help? And then we can talk about the key customer initiatives that sales are working on with the customer, so that we're able to support those initiatives, because now we know about them. Where in the past, there were things going on that we could have helped. We just never knew about them.
In your own journey, Rob, what belief about, let's say, sales or operations did you have to unlearn or let go to now lead effectively in this more complex, more intelligence-driven world? What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a tough question for me because I'm innately curious and open-minded. I like to, I grew up a coach. I grew up coaching, and I like to read the playing field and love the game of adapting and pivoting and shifting. But what I think I had to really give up is that I have this viewpoint that everybody wants to be really good. Everybody's going to go run to the areas and address the areas that are going to make them better. And that's just not the case. People are people, so sometimes they don't have the same focus on the things that we do. So for my team, when we're trying to drive world-class metrics for all of our customers, and we have some customers that just won't engage, that was very foreign to me. And I had to kind of pivot and shift and understand that sometimes either, there's many reasons, right? Sometimes there's staffing issues. Sometimes it's just human issues. But I needed to pivot and shift away from everybody's going to do the right things and head to the best place for the base of the business to not everybody's going to do that. So what are we going to do to pivot and adapt to that particular environment?
If you had a crystal ball and look 5 years ahead, what do you think will surprise us about how healthcare sales teams use data? And what do you think the human edge, sort of the human part of things, what will still matter in that respect?
I think in 5 years, you're going to see AI directed sales. So if you think about opportunity reports as they traditionally exist today, right? They flow in through CRM and it says, hey, right, we're featuring this product. Your customer buys it from our competitor, go sell this to this customer. But I think it's going to go deeper than that. I think AI is going to allow us to get deeper insights into customer entity level behaviors, buying patterns, buying decisions, and be more directive. And I think it's also going to allow us to capture and gather more individual human being buying behaviors and analytics. So when somebody leaves one organization and goes to another, can we capture and get insights based on what they did at the previous organization? And I think that data will then get aligned with what are we selling? And the computer, the AI agent, is going to tell the sales rep, you're going into this call today. This is what you should focus on because that's what all the indicators are, right? But I think the human to human thing will never go away. The computer's not always right. People are not always predictable. And at the end of the day, I firmly believe that people sign the purchase order with the people that they trust and with the people that they believe in. And that's certainly not the computer.
I fully agree. Fully agree. If let's play the start, stop, keep question here. If you had to give a quick audit to sales leaders on navigating complexity, let's say, what should they start, stop, and keep doing to stay ahead of buyers' expectations?
Start to simplify things. Complexity exists. It's not going to go away. And it's hard to operate in a complex environment. But if we start to simplify it and we break it down to truly what are the customer asks and expectations, then we're able to align the resources and the process steps we need to solve the problem. But I think complexity tends to cloud the real issue in the real goal. So we've got to start to simplify that, break it down with the customer into achievable bites, right? It's hard to build the whole house in one swing of the hammer. Sometimes you have to take it a step at a time, but that continual progress builds momentum with our customers. Number two, and this is going to be the quintessential, fully expected sales operations: stop saying yes to everything and stop lighting forest fires. Not everything is a forest fire. Not everything is complex, and not everything is executable, right? So the better answer is that's a really good question. Let me bring in my expert and let's have those conversations and build together and not create panic within the organization and not promise things that we're not able to deliver on. And I would say most important thing, keep the customer and the customer goals top of line, number one, forefront. It is the abject most important thing. And I think, look, there are times, candidly, that our customers drive us crazy. We drive them crazy. But if we don't
Right.
have our customers, then what do we have? And that's the goal that we work for on a daily basis: is what do we do to make life easier for our customers?
Love it. One question that we've asked on every single podcast since we started this 3 years ago, over 3 years ago now, is what, in your opinion, are the top three qualities that separate good sellers from truly exceptional ones nowadays? What
Yeah,
would those two
I
things
had to
be?
pause on that for a second because everybody's so used to talking about skills. Oh, they're great listeners. They're great
Right,
relationship builders.
right.
Um, and those are important, right? But it's funny that you asked this because I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday around when my sales career, and number one, I think it's humility. Um,
Hmm.
I think salespeople that make it all about them don't create customers; they create sales. So I think humility creates trust with the customer. It builds relationships. Humility creates trust with the support team, and it builds relationship. And as a sales support organization, and I've told this to our salespeople, my team will work harder for the salespeople that they really like. And if they don't like you, because if you're not humble, if you're not good to them, it's just human nature that they're not going to walk that extra mile for us. I think humility, one. Number two, the effective use of resources. I think when you're able to bring in the right resources, number one, it creates depth in your customer relationship. Number two, it reduces false starts, right? So you don't start down a road thinking it's one thing because you're doing it all on your
Mhm.
own, and then you find out it's something else. Now you're 4 steps behind your competition because they had it figured out first. And then I also think it energizes the internal team. It gets the internal team connected to the goal, to the chase for that customer business. And then the last thing is ownership. Own it
Mm.
at the customer level, own it at the internal level. Um, Pointing fingers is never appreciated, but I think that ownership has to go hand in hand, right? We need our salespeople to own it when they need to own it, and we need our salespeople as sales support, sales enablement teams are not salespeople. They are not the type A out in front, right? So we need our sales teams to own it, and conversely, we need leaders like myself that are leading sales operation organizations to own it when we're the shortfall, when we're the shortcoming, and step up and you say, yeah, that's on us, and we've got to be better.
Right. Absolutely. Are you up for a quick fire on the personal human side of the great Rob?
Let's do it.
Give us a book or an idea that has shaped, how you lead today.
I would tell you that the book is Lead for God's Sake.
All
My
right.
my leadership approach, you can chase metrics through people, or you can build people to hit your metrics. And I've always looked at it as build people to hit your metrics. And I think Lead for God's Sake is a brilliant book. And of course, anything by Jocko Willink I'm going to read or listen to.
Love it. How about a habit that keeps you grounded when you just had a tough day?
Yeah, my faith is very important to me. So when I have a tough day or I'm in a tough moment, just stepping back and kind of get into a little bit of a prayer and just, you know, allows me to exhale, allows me to ground, and then I'm all set to move forward.
Love it. Love it. Share one word you'd use to describe the future of healthcare sales?
For as cliche as this will also sound, dynamic. We're going through rapid change. We're going to continue to go through rapid change. So it's going to be exciting to see ultimately where we settle out over the next few years.
Love it. Rob, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you for your time. Our listeners very much appreciate your insight and thought leadership. Thank you. Fabulous. What I loved about this conversation with Rob, my lovely people, is how human it all is and sort of comes together, even in a world that's becoming more data-driven by the second, by the minute, right now as we speak, because beneath the dashboards, the AI models, the shifting buying patterns, Rob's message really was simple. Nothing replaces clarity, consistency, and that true and genuine partnership. Not between sales and ops, not between suppliers and manufacturers, and definitely not between a company and its customers. If today's episode gave you something to think about, a new lens on how buying behavior is evolving, especially in healthcare, or made you rethink of how your own organization handles perception versus reality, so to speak, share this episode with somebody else who would find value in it. If you like the conversation, go subscribe to this podcast and share this episode. You can find us at b2bsalestrends.com or on our YouTube channel. Until the next time, my lovely people, look after yourself, your loved ones, and of course, your B2B customers. Bye-bye.